Holy City Center Radio, it is episode 216, and I am your host, Christian Sanger. Today is Friday, January 26th, 2024. Friday. It is time for the weekend, and can you believe this weather we've had the last couple of days? It's been in the 70s. I mean, low 70s, but the 70s, and it's late January. This is insane, especially after we had that little cold snap. Again, I know the days weren't so bad, but overnight it got pretty darn chilly, and now we're having 70-degree days. I mean, I think it hit 70 before noon on Thursday, which is wild. And we'll see how long it continues. I'm certainly not complaining. I'm not a big fan of the extremes. I certainly don't love those July and August days that are well into the 90s or touching 100 degrees by any stretch. And I certainly don't like the cold. But I'll take 70 degrees in January. That's for darn sure. That's fantastic. Other than that, I did actually go do something this week. I'll just give you a quick recap of that. It was a media preview type event for another event that is coming up. It's an annual one. I've attended it multiple times. It's called Lip Sync for Lungs. It's going into its 8th year. And the actual event will be held in February on Leap Day, actually, February 29th at the Charleston Music Hall. There's a few ways to get tickets. So you can do it through the Music Hall site as normal, purchase tickets, go to the event. You can also look up who is participating this year, and maybe you know someone or want to support someone, and you can donate to their cause. And some of those, depending on how much you donate, you get a ticket automatically to the show. So it's put on by the American Lung Association, specifically the South Carolina chapter. So all money goes towards that organization. And they are pushing total, for this they're going into this 8 years. So for the last 7 years, they are almost at $1 million raised. They're not far off. They may be able to hit it this year, which is pretty incredible that they've been should be able to hit that this year. It's not out of the realm of possibility by any means. So impressive that they've raised. I know we're here a little early, but I'm going to say it. Raised $1 million, especially as an event that just started kind of, without a whole lot of fanfare as far as like media coverage and things. And even though it's going into its 8th year, I still don't see it being talked about a lot. And it's a really great event, and it's phenomenal what they've been able to do without a huge media PR push. And for an event, it's not one of those legacy events that have been around for, a decade plus, although they're getting there. So in any event, if you haven't been able to tell from the title, there's a handful of participants. They choose a song. Sometimes, each year they may have a theme. Sometimes there isn't. This year is an 80s theme. So they're all going to pick an 80s song and obviously lip sync to. I've been, I think 4 times now, but in whatever amount of times it's been, everybody gets dressed up, full costume. They'll have depending on what artist, whose song they're lip syncing, they might have backup dancers or people pretending to play instruments, or they might try to recreate a famous music video. And it's a lot of fun. The crowd gets really into it. There's judges. They pick a winner. But obviously, the main goal is to raise money for the American Lung Association. So I highly recommend the event. It really is a lot of fun, even if you don't know any of the participants personally. So this week I went to a preview event. So they have, little bites to eat, some drinks and things. It's at the music hall. It's kind of fun being there when there's only a group of 20 people or so, being in that venue. We were able to meet the participants, learn a little bit about them, and then interact with other members of the media, which includes, it's kind of a loose term for this event. Sometimes it's bloggers, people doing things like myself. There's photographers, there's corporate sponsors, people who donated money, to have their business included and stuff like that. So it's just a nice little networking event. A friend of mine is heavily involved and has been for years. And so that's how I first really started to get involved. I post about events regardless if I know the people involved, but obviously I can't go out and do everything. I would lose my mind trying to attend every event ever. So the reason I stumbled into this one was because of a friend, and I'm glad I did because it's a lot of fun. So it was a nice preview. I'm looking forward to what this year's performers are going to do. It seems like, based on what they were saying, it's going to be a whole lot of fun again, and I highly encourage you all to get tickets for that. So that's all I really did this week, besides the normal boring stuff you don't want to hear about. So without any further delay, we'll get you into the latest headlines. When I was home for the holidays, I forget which one, and I don't believe I've told this on the podcast yet, but if I have, I apologize. It's not a long story. But when I was home, one of my parents said, they were both in the room with me, and one of them said, "Hey, we've been catching up on your podcast episodes. A lot of times we'll listen when we go to the gym," which, great job by my parents getting to the gym. My dad goes like every day. My mom's been doing really great this new year, and it's amazing that they're able, to put in that effort. But that's neither here nor there. They're like, yeah, a lot of times we'll listen to stuff at the gym, of course, and we get caught up on your podcasts. And I said, "Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. You guys don't have to listen, but I really appreciate it." And they said, "So, Nancy Mace," and just kind of like left it hanging there. And I basically rolled my eyes and said something to the effect of, although a lot more forceful than this, I'm sure. I said something along the lines of, "Yeah, I really dislike her." Um, and I think it was my dad just kind of chuckled and was like, "You think?" So apparently my distaste for our representative is very clear, which I assumed it was. I would love nothing more than to never speak about her again. Unfortunately, she is in office, and we got to discuss some of the things she says and does. I don't go out and search for negative stories about her or things to complain about. They just happen, and it's I see them and I'm like, I have to talk about this. Like, she represents District 1. That includes a very big chunk of people who visit Holy City Center or listen to this podcast. And, she has made a name for herself in, kind of like a B or C level politician as far as who gets covered. So look, like I said, I don't try to go search these things out. They show up in the news, and it's like, how can I not talk about this? Uh, and being a politician, this isn't like a punching down thing. I'm punching up. She's a politician. This is a speak truth to power type thing, even though there's no way in hell she listens to this. I mean, she unfollowed me after the election for obvious reasons on social media. But if you thought this whole national Nancy thing couldn't be any more craven, disappointing, or embarrassing, do I have a story for you? And this actually was like day one of her being in office, and we're just learning about it now. According to two reports, the first of which was the Washington Post. So this isn't some like gossip website or, something like that. But according to two separate reports, as those pro-Trump folks were storming the Capitol and rioting in an attempt to stop Congress from certifying the presidential election back on January 6th of 2021, our lovely representative Nancy Mace tried to convince her staff to let her get attacked by those rioters. Yes, this is as insane as it sounds. The Washington Post reports that Mace was so incensed at then President Donald Trump that she brought up the idea of approaching rioters in hopes that she could get punched in the face and then become the face of anti-Trump Republicans. So it's already just bonkers. Shows you that from day one, she wanted attention, media coverage. But the other side to this, of course, is the fact that she was so annoyed and so disliked Trump, especially in the face and witnessing this riot happen, that she wanted to become the face of Republicans against Trump. And we all know what had happened to a lot of those folks. Lindsey Graham saying he's done, count him out after the riots and Congress got back in session. People kind of were like, we're done with this guy. And of course, everyone has ended up bending the knee and doing a complete 180, including Nancy Mace. Again, it shows what she actually believed and then what she does for political gain. So, besides the fact getting punched in the face, not fun, I would imagine. Besides that, and any potential that could have things that could have spun out from that, probably good this didn't happen for the additional side that she is now, you know, basically gone from I want to get attention and become the person, the face of being anti-Trump in the Republican Party to basically going, "Thank you, sir. May I have another?" at every dig, every attack that the former president does against her. Uh, so there's that side to it as well. But back to the main point. So, hours after the Washington Post published that piece, the Daily Beast then seconded the reporting, noting that three sources who personally witnessed the conversations confirmed that they happened. So, it's two separate news organizations with different sources and multiple sources confirming that this happened. Those sources told the Beast that Mace explicitly said she wanted to, quote, get punched in the face, end quote, for, and this is a quote again, media attention, end quote. When asked about the incident by the Washington Post, Mace just insulted the publication. You'll notice I say insulted. I didn't say denied it, which is classic. You know, basically she was like, "Oh, your reporting is garbage" or something like that. Like, you guys are a joke as a media organization. I forget her exact quote, but it did not include a denial. That's a key tell right there. No surprise, as we've talked about before, during her short time in office, Mace has repeatedly been accused of making decisions that were specifically had the goal of drawing attention from the press. She has succeeded in this. The big, most damning report came in November of last year when the Daily Beast talked about her requiring staffers to book her on to national television at least 1 to 3 times per day. And that's how this whole, and the National Nancy name is actually one she gave herself. She's also gone out of her way to draw attention to herself with outfit choices. We all know the Scarlet A shirt that she wore when she was one of the handful of Republicans to oust House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. Prior to that, a lot of people have forgotten that back in July of 2022, she wore a jacket that said, quote, "My state is banning exceptions." And then there was no punctuation, but underneath it then said "protect contraception," end quote, which is crazy because she was an architect of the abortion bill here in South Carolina before she left the state house for the federal position. She was behind the ban and then was shocked, just shocked that it got passed and that it made it even more extreme. So yes, this is nothing new, but this is just another example, and it is absolutely wild that this whole national Nancy nonsense started on basically day one of her being in office, where she wanted to go down and face the rioters in hopes of getting punched in the face just so she could get some media attention and become the face of the Republican Party's anti-Trump movement. It's all wild. And then to see where she is now, bending the knee to dear leader, whew, it's comical, but so incredibly sad that this is what our politics are like and what our representative is like. Uh, but here we are. Get used to it. National Nancy isn't going anywhere. And I'm sure as more and more staffers leave their positions with her, quit because we've heard all sorts of accusations, hostile workplace, and it being inappropriate, talking about her sex life, uh, making these ridiculous demands of them, not really legislating, not really being interested in it. Her main goal is just to be on TV and be famous. I'm sure we'll hear more of these stories come out as more people quit and leave, as undoubtedly she's not going to change her methods. So be prepared. Unfortunately, there will be more stories like this, I'm sure. All right, enough of that nonsense. Back here, we've got a very interesting story going on Sullivan's Island. The police chief out there, Chris Griffin, has been placed on administrative leave amid an investigation into a personnel matter. Now, there's not a lot of details, so I apologize. They just are not making these details available at this time. That may change when the investigation is done. But at this time, we don't know a lot. News 2 is reporting that the town administrator told them that Chief Griffin was placed on leave a couple of weeks ago, and this story came out this week. So he's actually been on leave for about 3 weeks now. However, the town would not go into details about the investigation, other than to say that it was an internal investigation and it was related to personnel. He was officially placed on administrative leave on January 1st, and then was eventually placed on administrative leave without pay on January 17th. So he was still he was on leave getting paid for a little while. A couple weeks in, they decided, yeah, we're going to continue this leave, but with no pay, which is also interesting. Deputy Chief Glenn Meadows is currently overseeing the department during this time. Now, Griffin has actually been with the Sullivan's Island Police Department for a long time, since 1997. Obviously not as chief that entire time, but just within that department. And while News 2 and no other media outlets were able to actually get the circumstances about this personnel matter, they did note that Griffin has a history of complaints filed against him while he has been in this department. They mentioned that the town launched an investigation into another personnel matter against Griffin back in December of 2019. This came out of a previous incident that allegedly occurred during a vendor exposition the month prior. He remained on the job during that investigation, so a little bit different in the sense that he wasn't placed on any sort of leave. A lawsuit filed against the town in Griffin accused him of sending inappropriate messages to two women who were working at the South Carolina Police Chiefs Association annual leadership conference held in Myrtle Beach. So that's what that first investigation was about. Obviously, nothing substantial really came out of that. He still remained in that role. So now it's interesting to know what exactly this one is about. It's interesting that this time he's placed on leave and then leave without pay after a few weeks. So it would seem that this may be something somewhat significant, since it's a harsher penalty, even though they may ultimately decide he hasn't done anything wrong, of course. But the fact that it's different from a pretty significant accusation about sending inappropriate messages to people, back in 2019. So, who knows? Hopefully, we'll get some more information, and I'll be sure to update you all when that happens. Quick update. We've talked about the summer EBT program and how Governor McMaster decided, no, we don't need to be offering free food to folks well below the federal poverty line during the summer to help feed their kids. Well, state Democrats decided that's unacceptable. And on Tuesday, they filed some legislation that would require the state to participate in the 2024 summer EBT program, also known, you might know it like SNAP, or previously, in other states, food stamps might be a name you're familiar with. That's essentially what it is, but specifically for the summer months because kids are out of school and don't have access to, say, free or discounted lunch from the school. Just as a quick recap, the summer EBT program is for lower income students, allows them to receive, and it's for students specifically, not just lower income, but also are already receiving free or reduced cost meals during the school year. They would then also receive an EBT card over the summer. So who would fit under this category? They're families who are at or under 185% of the federal poverty line, which is about $55,000 for a family of four. Here's what Representative Marvin Pendarvis, a Democrat from Charleston, said, quote, "South Carolina isn't winning when our kids are hungry. We cannot allow one man's decision to cause thousands of children to suffer," end quote. The summer EBT program was set to replace the PEBT program that the state was participating in through this past summer. That was related to the pandemic, and that was part of the reason McMaster said he was opting out of this program, saying that was meant for the pandemic. It's time to get back to business as usual, which apparently means not allowing certain children to necessarily have access to food on a day-to-day basis during the summer. There is one difference between the program. The pandemic version was fully federal funded, so that means the state didn't have to provide any money to participate. However, this new summer EBT program that's replacing the pandemic version would have required each state to contribute 50% of the program's administrative costs. Again, not 50% of however much money is being sent out to families, just 50% of administrative costs, which would have been, in terms of a state budget, not a big deal at all. But as we discussed, Henry McMaster decided to say, forget them kids. They don't need to eat. So we'll see if this bill gets any traction. As we've talked about all the time, the state house, whether it's the House or the Senate here in South Carolina, is blood red. Both are heavily dominated by the Republican Party. And although they do sometimes break from Governor McMaster, it's rare. So it may be tough for this to even get any traction. But we have seen some people cross party lines on issues when they realize, like, no, this is good for people in my constituency. We need to do this. So there's always that chance. But who knows? Hopefully, this will gain some traction and get passed. So when the summer comes, some of these lower income children will have another area where they can get access to food that they might not have otherwise. That will do it for this week and this episode of Holy City Sinner Radio. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for listening. The Best of Charleston nomination period closed on Thursday, so I'm not going to bug you about that for a little while. Hopefully, we'll get some nominations and become officially announced as finalists for the final votes. I'm not sure when that will be. I'll let you know if we were nominated for anything, and then I'll have that nice push again to vote for Holy City Center in whichever categories we may or may not end up in. But there are some things you can do to help support this podcast and the show if you do enjoy it. Number one is rating, reviewing, liking, subscribing, all that good stuff. Whatever streaming platform you're on, please go ahead and do things like that. It helps out majorly. Another thing you can do is go to patreon.com/Holy City Sinner and sign up for one of those support tiers. And any of those things would be a big, big help, and I greatly appreciate it. I need to thank Lindsay Marie Collins with LMC Sound System for producing this in every single episode of Holy City Center Radio, and Tyler Boone, whose music you hear in each and every show. Have a fantastic weekend. Hopefully this warm weather will continue throughout, although I hear we may have a little rain. We'll see what happens. Whatever it is, go to holycitycenter.com. You can find out what's going on in town if you're looking for some events, whether indoor, outdoor, all sorts of things going on. But no matter what you do, be safe, have fun, and just get out there and enjoy the Holy City in whatever capacity you want to. And I will talk to you again on Monday. Until then, though, good night and good luck.